All right. Is the new Blockbuster Kickstarter comic that launched on Kickstarter called Berserker by Keanu Reeves and Matt Kint and Ron Garney and Boom Studios, is this bad for indie comic creators? I am going to talk about this because this is sort of the buzz in the world of comics, with a literal boom and a figurative boom. This project launched yesterday, and it is right now on track to be one of the most, if not the most funded comic book project in Kickstarter history. So with over 3,600 backers and over $357,000 raised on the platform already, this thing is tearing up the charts, and I'm seeing a lot of discussion on it in my feed. And I want to talk about this because I have, as you probably aren't surprised, strong opinions about this. And I think this is actually really important that we get this thing right. My name is Tyler James. I'm the publisher of Comics Tribe, which is a publisher of comics, graphic novels, children's books, and toys. And I am also the founder of Comics Launch Pro, which is a community and a program designed to help comic creators build audiences and launch successful crowdfunding projects to them. And if you are interested in this world, if you are new to me or new to the Comics Launch community, I want to encourage you to go and jump in our free Comics Launchers private Facebook group. This is a free group for a chance to connect with other successful comic creator crowdfunders and get some more strategies, tactics, and other things that will help you with your future launches. So you can just join that over at comicslaunch.com/group. All right, so I want to get into this, but before I do, let's just cover what happened. Let's talk about this launch really quickly. So yesterday, a project launched on Kickstarter, and it was by a name that had probably made a lot of us go, whoa, but Keanu Reeves. Yes, that Keanu Reeves has partnered up with Boom Studios and co-writer Matt Kint and longtime renowned mainstream comic book artist Ron Garney to produce a new graphic novel series. And as you can see, it took off like a bat out of hell. Over $357,000 raised on the platform right now. This thing goes up all the time, and it's for a new series. It's actually interesting in that this isn't just for one book. It's actually they're sort of pre-ordering and pre-funding 3 full volumes of this series, which is something you don't see a lot. But there's details. There's some premium rewards. This is the first time that Boom Studios has launched a Kickstarter project, so they're jumping into the Kickstarter game, and all the details are over here on Kickstarter. So you can check this out on Kickstarter. It's at the top of the charts, not hard to find. But what I've seen is a lot of creators express a lot of opinions, and a lot of, in particular, strong opinions about this project. And so some of the things that I've seen people say are things like, Kickstarter, it should be for people that are up and coming, and it's not for the established people. Or this goes against everything that Kickstarter stands for, or this is a slap in the face to the independent creator or the little guy that Kickstarter was created for, and that this shouldn't be allowed, or you shouldn't have a big time publisher and a multimillionaire Hollywood guy coming in here. They don't need crowdfunding. Or I've seen people point out, and there's those prices are way too inflated. And some people, complain this thing is sucking up all the coverage, and Hollywood Reporter is doing a press release on this Kickstarter, but they would never cover my indie project, and now my indie project's not getting any coverage. Or you're seeing people say they don't, why is Boom doing this? They could go and pre-order this on their own site because it's Keanu Reeves and it would do well. What do they need Kickstarter for? And that by doing this, they're detracting from the folks that actually need it. So this is stuff that I'm seeing a lot of people say. If you are thinking these things, go ahead and let me know in the comments. Let me know what you're complaining about, if you have complaints about this project. But I want to address some of this because I think this stuff is really important. Now, I want to just tell you, you're all entitled to your own thoughts and your own opinions, right? I don't, that's one of the things that's great about being a human being, right? You get to have your control of your own thoughts. You get to have your own opinions. But it's important to realize that your thoughts are actually incredibly powerful. Your thoughts drive your feelings drive your actions produce the results that you have in your life and in your career and in your future. And what Comics Launch is all about, what the podcasts that I do and the courses that I do, it's results focused. Like, I want every one of you creators out there that have dream projects in your head, like, I want you to go out there and make them happen, right? And so when I see thoughts expressed that I know are going to be counterproductive to the results that I know you are after, I'm going to speak out against those thoughts. I'm going to provide some counter arguments to some of those thoughts, not because you're bad or you're wrong or that to have those thoughts. It's just simply that holding on to those thoughts, focusing on the condemnation or the complaining or the lack that this is going to create in your life is actually going to be the thing that prevents you from going out and getting to those higher levels yourself. And so I want to take a look at some of those things, some of those complaints, and just and really break them down. The first one, and I'm going to roll up a lot of the complaints because they're coming in different ways and different formats and things like that. But one of the things that comes up is around, they don't need this, right? And so the question then becomes like, okay, is Kickstarter only for creators that need it? Is it? If you say yes, then my question then becomes, who is in charge of deciding who needs it and who doesn't? Right? And is there anything that you are creating that actually needs to be created, right? Because, we're not creating the vaccine for COVID, right? We're not creating insulin. We're not creating things. We are creating things that we dreamed up in our communities, things that we dreamed up in comics that we hope people will like. But it's not like an absolute need. So to say that like we need Kickstarter, but Boom doesn't, or Keanu Reeves doesn't, all right, where do we draw that line? All right. Now, the argument a lot of creators are making is like, well, hey, he's got that Matrix money, right? He's got that John Wick money. If he wanted to, he could probably fund the entire venture himself. But we all know that funding is not the only reason for creators to run a Kickstarter campaign. And let's be real, Boom is not the first publisher or big name publisher to launch a project on the Kickstarter platform. Several years ago, Matt Hawkins from Top Cow launched a Kickstarter for a big Cyberforce collection. And he was up front. He said, we don't need the money to make this book. Like, this book could happen. Like, Mark Silvestri, he's doing all right for himself. Top Cow was doing all right. They don't need a massive Kickstarter success to produce that book. But they recognized that by the time that book came out, that there were a lot of people that are buying books on the Kickstarter platform. There are a lot of people that all or most of the money that they spend on comics now here is spent on the Kickstarter platform. They don't have a local comic shop. They might live overseas where where comics aren't a big thing. And so he sort of realized that, we would be idiots to not like launch this project. We'd be just leaving money on the table if we didn't attempt this, right? And so, having the funds to make the thing are not the same thing as not wanting to put it out into the world. All right. And there's like a lot of countercompeting messaging. One of a creator I know that said recently is like, we can't spend years trying to convince our audiences and convince the world that we're not going to Kickstarter as, hobos panhandling for spare change, asking for a handout. And instead, we're framing it as, hey, no, it's a Kickstarter. It's a launch. It's a month-long publicity tour. It's a month-long online comic convention where we can get direct engagement with our fans and pull them in. It's the publishing model of the future. But then as soon as a name that's bigger than we decide is okay comes on and tries to take part in that publishing model of the future, we're going to turn around and say, no, 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 they're taking money out of my pocket. They're taking my handout money. Like, no, like it's contradictory, right? Like either this is how things are going to be going in the future, or one of the options for how things are going to be in the future, or it's not. Like we don't get to choose that, right? And so there are other reasons besides just the funding or needing the funding to do this. In this case, Boom is actually doing this because they're trying a new model. They recognize that there are people that would like the ability to get a higher end collectible than they could traditionally sell through the direct market. That's another thing that Kickstarter allows you to do. They also are recognizing that there are some people that would like to, with just one purchase, get the entire thing and pre-order the entire thing and have that just taken care of, rather than doing the whole pre-order thing inside of the direct market. All right. And so there are multiple reasons beyond just need for why you launch a Kickstarter. And it's important for us as creators to recognize that how much you need the money has no bearing on whether or not your project is going to succeed or fail. And actually, the more you need the money, like the more you need the money and projecting neediness, the more you're going to actually repel that money. All right. Projects that succeed are projects that exude an air of confidence that this thing is happening no matter what. So you better get on board, because you're not going to want to. You're not going to be able to live with yourself if you missed out on it. Like that's the attitude and the approach and the thing that actually works for crowdfunding. All right. It's not about who has the biggest, like who has the least amount of money to make the thing that they want to make. In fact, like that's just not how it works. All right. So that's the first thing. Like Kickstarter is not only for creators that quote unquote need it. And you and I would not want someone else to be the determining person of who needs the money on Kickstarter and who doesn't, who can use it and who cannot. I'm positive that we wouldn't want that. Another thing that's coming up is, and this is kind of the big one, right? Because like if we would, like most indie creators would be all right with them doing it, even if they don't need the money, were it not for the fact that many are holding on the belief that the big guy, like the Keanu Reeves and the Boom Studios and the bigger publishers, when they launch a big project on Kickstarter, then that detracts from other creators on the platform. And, they're slapping down the little guy. They're stealing money out of the pockets of that. They're stealing money that would otherwise go to independent creators. And now it's going into the hands of millionaires, right? And that this is going to hurt you, or this is going to hurt your project. So let's look at that. All right. The first thing I want to say is I want to actually completely flip this and make it absolutely clear that projects like this are exactly the projects that help keep those lights on over at Kickstarter, which enables us to continue to use the platform and to use it for free unless we fund, right? Let's be real about what's gone down this year, right? Kickstarter itself had a massive drop in projects and revenue from all sorts of creators, usually in a lot of industries like film and music and venues and live, anything with live stuff, but also supply chains getting disrupted, et cetera. Like they had a massive drop in projects that kicked off in April and continued into May. We saw it in the comics category. 100 projects just disappeared from the platform, from creators that froze, paused, hit the brakes on their stuff, right? And it was worse in things like tech and other categories. And as a result, 30% drop in projects all resulted in about a 30% drop in overall revenue. And Kickstarter is a company that is not it's not a venture-backed company. They don't have millions and millions and millions in venture capital that's just sitting in the coffers that they can burn through. It's actually, it's an institution, but it's, 150, it was a little over 100 person company, right? Not a massive company. And so a 30% sudden drop in revenue and projected revenue, like that's a massive thing. And when a company loses that, you have two choices, right? You can either lay off staff or you can significantly increase prices to try to even things out. Now, Kickstarter did not raise their prices at all. They didn't increase their fees, or they didn't start charging a fee to every creator just to use the platform, which, let's be honest, most companies out there probably would have done, right? There's no, there's another world out there where it costs $100 to use Kickstarter, and because you can go and raise hundreds of thousands of dollars on it, if you succeed, a lot of creators might do that. But that's not what Kickstarter does, right? But they did lay off a bunch of staff, all right? And so in order to solve that, what does Kickstarter need to do? Well, they need to get more projects on the platform, and they need to get some bigger projects on the platform. And so, the reason that you and the first-time Kickstarter creator with a very small audience and a very small independent project can go and launch a free project on Kickstarter, raise $1,000, pay Kickstarter $50 for the privilege, their 5%, and then you keep the rest after credit card fees so that you can go make your thing. The reason you can do that is because there are some other projects out there that go and launch and raise millions and make Kickstarter 50 grand. A pop, the $1,000 project that makes Kickstarter $50, like that pays for what, like an hour or two of some of their mid-level salaries for like an hour for one worker of their hundreds. Let's just be honest, like projects like this keep Kickstarter going, and so we want to see projects like this that succeed and drive revenue and keep the platform whole and active. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that these projects really do bring in new blood and new backers. There's 3,600 people backing this Kickstarter campaign, and during the Todd McFarlane campaign, which was a few months ago and raised millions, over 1,000 first-time Kickstarter backers came and backed that project. I know, because if you're a creator that is in this community or if you've been launching projects on Kickstarter, you assume that Kickstarter is old news and ubiquitous and everyone knows about this. But it's still not true. Like, most people in the world have not backed a Kickstarter campaign. Most people in America have not backed a Kickstarter campaign yet. But what we do know is that when people back Kickstarter campaigns, a significant portion of them keep backing more and more and more. And you see these super backers out there. Every time I've launched campaigns, I'll see super backers that pop up, and occasionally I'll click on them. It's like, this person's backed 1,000 campaigns, right? 1,000 campaigns. Like, even if it's $1 a piece, that's still, some good money. And most of those super backers are actually going in at higher levels. So how many super backers does this campaign bring to the platform? All right. And then not only that, though, is that, and so that's sort of like a long-term thing. Like, the pie is growing. They're bringing new blood to the platform, so the pie is growing. So it's a bigger overall platform for all of us. But the reality is, for some creators that have projects on Kickstarter, this creates like an instant boost. All right, an instant boost to their campaign. David Pepos was on. I interviewed him the other day. He's got an awesome project called the OZ, which is on Kickstarter right now, and he found out like the day before he was launching that Scott Snyder and Tony Daniel, two of the biggest names in the world of comics for the past decade, were launching their first Kickstarter the same day as him launching his first Kickstarter. Now, I know a lot of creators that would scare them away, and they'd be like, oh, screw that, I'm launching next month. But David said that was actually the best thing to happen to his Kickstarter campaign. Why is that? It's Kickstarter's recommendation engine. All right. It's his recommendation engine. Kickstarter has actually been doing a really good job of pushing additional projects to people when they back Kickstarter projects. And how cool is this, right? All right. So this is a project launched by, one of the top 5 publishers. It's got biggest actors in Hollywood, an Eisner nominated, 4-time Eisner nominated writer, and a industry just workhorse veteran. But what are the books that are, on the shelf right below this awesome projects? Well, yeah, there's that Scott Snyder project that's also crushing it. Here's another just beautiful project by another successful creator. And then here's Newton Lilavoie's project right here. Newton is a creator. This is his first book, his fourth launch. He's serialized it, and it's his best launch yet. And he is drafting nicely. Last I checked, this was like, he was over 15K. He's drafting nicely off this. This right here, Kieran Silva. Kieran is an indie comic staple. He's been working hard on this series. He's been serializing it. And that's something that, you know, this is great real estate for those creators. It is like having your book on the shelves right next to Batman or Superman, right? There's no guarantee that anyone is going to buy your book or back your book from it, but the chances that they'll even know about it go way up because the headline of Keanu Reeves is writing comics now, you can go pre-order his book now for $50 or whatever, like that gets people here and then it gets there. This also happens, you know, they've already sent, Boom Studios has already sent out 2 updates. Whenever you send a Kickstarter update now, at the bottom of your updates, they're promoting a few other great projects. Often those projects are other quality indie projects. And so if you have a good book and it's in alignment with the kind of stuff that's being created by these bigger name creators, Kickstarter's going to push that for you, right? That's awesome. That's awesome. And, you know, another thing that comes up is like, well, you know, people only have so much money that they're going to spend. And so this is taking money away from that would otherwise be spent on indies. But you know, and I know that that's just not how people's budgets work. I don't know anyone that has a specific comics Kickstarter budget that says, I will, rain or shine, month in, month out, spend $50 on comics Kickstarters, and I will not spend $1 less and I will not spend $1 more, right? No one does that, right? And so the idea that people only have one project a month that they're going to back and that Keanu just stole everyone's else's pledge for September, it's just thinking small. The more awesome projects there are on Kickstarter, the more projects people will back on Kickstarter. So your job is not to worry about this project. Your job is to make your project as awesome as possible so that someone that would like a project like this would it'd be a no-brainer for them to get yours too. And then one more thing that I'll just come up with is this idea that Kickstarter should only be for the up and coming and not for the established. I've been seeing this pop up a lot, right? And what I want to do for you when you think about that idea is let's take that to the logical conclusion. If Kickstarter is only for the up and comers and not for the established, then that means that if everything goes well for you and your career, you will need to eventually walk away from the Kickstarter platform. Even if you are able to build a massive success and a massive following of fans that love supporting you on Kickstarter. You nurtured them. You had awesome campaigns with them. You celebrated with them. Like you build great engagement. But what happens when you become then on the back of Kickstarter, you become established? Does that mean that you have to leave the platform once you get too big? That you can no longer launch a Kickstarter project to your fans because now you are established? Is the only way that you can get to stay on Kickstarter is if you never make it? If you never become that high level? Never fully realize your potential? Like, is that the only way that you are, still up and coming and not established and thus can stay on Kickstarter? Like, no, man, that's hogwash, right? And what compounds this even more is that indie creators for a long time, I know a lot of us, like we launch our books on Kickstarter and we get it printed. Maybe it's a print on demand thing, or even if we do an offset print run, some creators out there have still sort of worry about like, is there a stigma? Is there an asterisk on my book because it was Kickstarter funded and not a real book, or didn't go through the direct market, or wasn't in Diamond? That somehow having a Kickstarter book, even though it has panels and colors and staples and a lot of times a professional artist, like it's somehow lesser than other books out there. It's not as legitimate as other books out there. Well, look, right now you have award-winning writer, top-notch veteran illustrator, world-renowned actor, launching a book on the very same platform that you want to launch your book on. It's a world-class team. It's a top 5 publisher. They're launching their project on the same platform as you. They're like, how much more legitimacy does the platform need? None. Like, this is the legitimacy that every one of our books wants, but you're complaining about it? Come on. Come on. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, we don't want Kickstarter to be known as the platform that's only for average, subpar, not ready for primetime books, do we? Because I don't want my books to be looked like that. Like, when I first got in this game, there was no Kickstarter. My goal was always to have my comics on the shelves next to the biggest and the best books out there. I wanted to be in that company. All right. Well, as things developed, it turned out it's very hard, even if your book is that good, because of the way the direct market was set up and the way the catalog works and the way Diamonds works and the way returnability and the risk that retailers have to take. It is extremely hard to get your book, even if it is better than everything else that's on the direct market, on the shelves next to those other books. And so Kickstarter became a way that was just a lot easier to get the thing rolling and to succeed on the merits of your books, right? And to get there on those shelves. And so we were there, and now we've got people outside of that coming to compete with us right next to us, and we're going to call foul? Come on. If anything, this should make you want to up your game so that anyone that's backing this will see no difference between the awesome Kickstarter campaign that Boom Studios is running and the awesome Kickstarter campaign that you're running. Because the truth is, your books are going to have staples or be case bound just like their books. Their books are going to be printed. Your books are going to be printed. And it's more about the content of the books than, the people behind them. All right. Okay. So I know I want to check my comments a little bit. I know I'm preaching a little bit. We'll see if a couple things. I got Larry's in the house. He says, I think it's a huge ad for comic shops. It's a Kickstarter for trades that ship in 2021. The comic book starts shipping next month. Everyone started asking for it yesterday. See, that's an awesome thing too. And they are like, they're trying a new model. And this is the other thing that, I want to point out. A lot of the same people that are that have for years been complaining about the direct market or complaining about the Diamonds chokehold on comic retailers and comic shops, or the pre-order system being broken, or all the stuff, like complaining that the system's not working. And yet here's a publisher, they're trying something new. Like and this is definitely a different approach to it. But they're trying something new, and your first reaction is to just throw an epic load of shade on these people. Now Boom has said that they have the funds to produce the book, but this Kickstarter is a chance for people to pre-order the entire series at once instead of having to keep checking back for new issues, and to just, order it once, forget about it, and every couple of months after it's out, they'll get the book shipped to them. But they also know that there are great retailers out there that are going to be happy to deliver this in trades, or maybe it'll also be singles. And so, it's great to see that there's a retailer perspective that, this is actually one of the biggest things that they can do to build awareness for this series or this book that's going to be in multiple different distribution channels, multiple different areas. So it's a good thing to see that there's multiple levels to this, right? And so a couple of things I wanted to touch on. Some of the shade I've seen is people are saying that this is a cash grab, and wow, like those prices are inflated, or the shipping costs are outrageous. And again, for these creators, I want to say a lot of these creators are the same creators that are complaining about certain publishers' page rates, or the same creators that are complaining that there's no money in comics, or the same creators are complaining that the price points, and their margins aren't working, right? Personally, as a small press independent publisher, I love it when competitors are charging higher prices. I love it when they're raising prices, because that either makes my prices look better, or it gives me the opportunity to raise my prices and get my margins up a little bit. But also, it's important to say that with this campaign in particular, you're not really comparing apples to apples. Like, yes, these shipping prices look high when you go down to it, except for when you realize, all right, yeah, $25. That looks like a high shipping price, except for that's actually three shipments, three separate shipments of the books, right? And also, given what's going on with the Postal Service and how often, rates are hiking, and who knows, like this, they are taking a gamble at just putting those charges in as what they are right now. So again, I'm not going to hate on other people. I'm not going to spend other people's money for them. Our goal and our duty as creators is make the best thing that we can, charge a price, and make an offer where we are confident that the value that we're offering is a great value for the price that we're charging, and then let the market decide. And I'm not going to complain about another creator's pricings, because I don't have access to their bottom lines. I don't know what their bills are. And I have to assume that there's some pretty hefty bills with a world-class team like this. And just managing a project of this size is going to require a team and require potentially a higher price point. So I'm not gonna hate on that. Now, is this a perfect Kickstarter campaign? If my man Ross called me up and asked me for my advice on this campaign, would I have some things that I would say, oh, you probably could have done this better, or maybe you should think about this or that? Of course, we can always sort of nitpick, or we can always find room for improvement. And I've run 20 successful launches, and I've never run a perfect campaign yet. I think, in general, for most creators, especially for most first-time creators, funding 3 volumes of a series that has never been released yet, that you haven't even started or gotten out of the world, trying to fund 3 volumes at once is almost always a bad idea. May turn out to be a bad idea for this team. I don't know, but you know what? Like, that is something that they're going to learn and they're going to figure out, and they have reasons for it. And I tend not to criticize people that have done more in this industry, significantly more in this industry than I have. And Boom Studios has done significantly more in terms of the books that they've put out, the fan base that they've created, the goodwill, the relationships, etc. So I'm not gonna, even though I have the Kickstarter experience, and even though I can potentially see some of the areas where this could be challenging, or things that they could have done differently, I'm not going to criticize them, and I'm actually going to root for them to do well and to do awesome, because I know this is a rising tide lifts all ships scenario. And so, yeah, so a couple other things. What else do we have? Oh, and then another thing that I've seen is this idea that actors should stay out of comics, right? And I haven't seen so many of this, but people throwing shit, oh, this will be a badly written book. No, it's not. It's not going to be a badly written book. Matt Kint is, has a Harvey Award at home and 4-time Eisner nominated creator. If anything, you gotta say that's awesome that Keanu coming in here wanting to have a comic series out there into the world, but knows that he should partner up with a world-class artist and a world-class writer and a top 5 publisher to get him up the learning curve as fast as possible, so he can focus on Matrix 4 or whatever he's going to do for Marvel, right? And then it's also kind of rich, because I haven't met a comic book creator that wouldn't also love to have his game or his IP jump into the world of film or TV or video games. And so for you to be saying, actors should stay out of comics, well, it's a little hypocritical, right? So yeah, what actors should stay out of comics, yet people line up in droves to do celebrity signings and photo ops. Come on already. Yeah. It's like a lot of these same people complaining about the actors coming to comics are complaining about, how it seems like not as many people are aware of the great stuff that's out in comics right now. Well, having a marquee figure like a Keanu Reeves legit like come in and throw a little spotlight on the art form cannot hurt. And I know there are retailers out there that actually like that they're going to love this thing. Yeah, Karl says, what's up, Karl? I have a feeling Matt Kent has a lot to do with this. He was the driving force behind the Cosmic Detective Kickstarter, which is also gangbusters. And good for him. Yeah, I mean, that's another thing that people are missing out. Like Matt Kent, he's an indie comics guy from the ground up. Like he's someone that has built his name and his reputation as like a true indie comic guy. And so we want like who among us would not want that opportunity to work with a name like Keanu on a property that's going to just have a lot of extra coverage and will eventually become a Netflix series and be a big thing or whatever it is. Like these are the opportunities that we want for ourselves. And if we are crapping on opportunities for creators that have done the work, have built a name for themselves from the ground up, panel by panel, script by script, relationship by relationship, project that went nowhere after project that went nowhere or just did okay. Like if we're going to then throw shade on them when they finally get these opportunities, that's precisely the thing that's going to keep you from ever getting those opportunities yourself. All right. And so I'm going to wrap this up because I could probably go for a while, but I'm actually going to jump in on here in a bit and hit up some of these comments and continue this discussion because it's a great discussion. But I want to just sort of leave and wrap this thing up with just the notion that our thoughts are powerful. The thoughts, the ideas, the concepts that we're putting out into the world, that we're saying to ourselves, they're powerful. And so if the thoughts that are in your head are things like Keanu or Boom or anybody is stealing my lunch on Kickstarter, that Kickstarter is supposed to be for some people, but not for others. And I or the collective consciousness should decide who it's okay for and who it's not okay for. If the idea that it's greedy when some people launch Kickstarter projects, but not when others do it. If the idea or the thoughts that you're thinking is that the big, massive success of others necessarily means less success is possible for me, instead of meaning that it's evidence that success is possible for creators like me. These thoughts have consequences, and none of those consequences are good for your creative career, for the results that you personally are trying to get. And so I want to just give you a few new things to think about instead. Like instead of thinking about the negative stuff that this launch, which has nothing to do with you, could have on your career, think about the fact that comic book projects are funding at a higher success rate than ever before on Kickstarter. And within the next 2 months at current rates, Kickstarter is going to be number 2 in terms of the highest funded, most highest success rate category on Kickstarter. We're going to pass, I believe, the dance category, and we'll be number 2. Also, think about this. The number of Kickstarter comic projects are completely back and now exceeding pre-COVID levels. So while, yes, there was a big dip in comic projects and Kickstarter projects overall before the COVID hit, comic projects are now, in terms of numbers of live projects on Kickstarter, it's higher than it was before COVID hit. All right. And that's not going to change. By current trend lines, like by the end of this year, we're going to have more projects that are live on Kickstarter than ever before. And yes, even more superstars and even more publishers are going to launch on Kickstarter. So if this is going to be the hill that you're going to die on, or this is going to be the thing that's going to throw you off your game and get you complaining and get you fired up and take your focus away from your own vision and your own dreams, guess what? There's a lot more of this coming. So you might as well cut that. Sorry, trying to keep it clean. You might as well cut that out now and just focus on the positive stuff. Because the truth is, there's no platform more diverse or active than Kickstarter is right now in the comics category. and the barriers of entry are still zero on Kickstarter. Your book could be next to the biggest superstars in the world of comics tomorrow if you launch. And so if you have a great book, your chances of being discovered and recommended are going to go up, not down, the more high-profile projects are out there that are launching. And as Kickstarter's recommendation engine continues to do its magic. Now, it's always been the case and always will be the case that you are responsible for building the guest list for your campaign. That it's your job, it's your work to get your people to your Kickstarter page. And as long as you do that, as long as you build audiences and get your project in front of them and get them excited about your launch when you're live, it's not going to matter how many superstars there are on the platforms. Because while it's awesome that this project is going to raise, who knows, maybe they'll raise $1 million on the platform. They'll be like the second Kickstarter project in history to raise over $1 million. Maybe this will become the most funded. Like, that'll be cool to see. It's been a while since we had a new number one. But as cool as that is, it is just as cool for the first time Kickstarter creator raising their first $1,000 or $2,000 and getting their book into their first 100 fans' hands. Like, that is just as cool. This game, like, it's like playing a video game, right? Like, you're as excited about beating the first level as the fifth level. And it's just because as you level up, you're like at every level, there's new wins, there's new challenges and everything. And so, it was just as exciting for me to make my first comic sale out of my backpack in high school for $1 as it was to raise, thousands and thousands of dollars for any of the Kickstarter campaigns. Right. It's like, and so that's far more than, that's more of what's going on. Like, this is the outlier, right? These are the outlier projects. Most of what's going on the Kickstarter platform in the comics category are creators that are launching their first campaigns and raising a few thousand, raising $10,000 to get their first graphic novel done. All right. And that's amazing for those creators too. And the last thing I'll say is, don't give up your power to anyone else. All right. If you spend 1 second thinking about how another creator's actions to bring their own creative visions to life that have absolutely nothing to do with you, if you're thinking about how that's going on is potentially or could potentially bring you down or hurt you, that's a second that you're not spent. That you're not spending bringing your own visions to life. Get out of the persecutor role, get out of the victim role, stay in the creator role, and make your stuff happen. All right. And so hopefully there's a pep talk. If you need to hear this, I hope you need to hear this. If you completely disagree with me, awesome. But I want you to explain to me how your disagreement, how your different thoughts, and how staying tied to those thoughts, how those thoughts create the actions and the results that you're trying to see in your creative career. Make those connections for me, all right? Because I do believe our thoughts are powerful, and I want to make sure that our thoughts are tied with the results that we're trying to achieve here, all right? Thanks so much for watching. Again, if you want more of this kind of stuff, if you like what you're hearing, come join us in the free Facebook group, comicslaunch.com/group. You'll connect with more like-minded, successful comic book Kickstarter creators, and we will continue to share what's working for all of us. And who knows, maybe we will get Ross Ritchie or Keanu Reeves or Matt Kent or Ron Garney on the podcast or for one of these interviews very soon, so that we can ask more questions about this thing in a positive light to learn and to grow, as opposed to tear down or complain or worry about how this might affect us. All right. Thanks so much for watching. Can't wait to see what you launch next.